Know, O Prince, that between the years when the oceans drank Atlantis and the gleaming cities, and the years of the sons of Aryas, there was an age undreamed of, when shining kingdoms lay spread across the world like blue mantles beneath the stars. Nemedia, Ophir, Brithunia, Hyperborea, Zamora with its dark-haired women and towers of spider-haunted mystery, Zingara with its chivalry, Koth that bordered on the pastoral lands of Shem, Stygia with its shadow-guarded tombs, Hyrcania whose riders wore steel and silk and gold. But the proudest kingdom of the world was Acheron, reigning supreme in the dreaming west. And of all Acheron's purple-towered cities, mightiest was Python. Its towers clawed at stars they had no right to touch. Its streets ran with channels that carried not water, but liquid darkness, harvested from dimensions where light had never shone. Upon its altars, things that had been men screamed prayers to gods whose names would blast sanity from mortal minds. This was Python. This was Acheron. This was civilization. In the highest tower, in a throne room of black marble veined with something that pulsed like captured lightning, sat Valyron the Pale. White hair fell past shoulders ridged with muscle earned through centuries of warfare. Crimson eyes that held no human warmth, only the cold appraisal of a predator who had forgotten what it meant to be prey. His face might have been carved from ancient ivory, beautiful and terrible as a winter dawn. He was not like other men. He was not entirely a man at all. Thus did Valyron rule, with iron certainty and unflinching will. He was Acheron's sword arm, Python's crimson-eyed guardian, champion, sorcerer, king. He stood at the apex of the most powerful civilization the post-cataclysmic world had ever known. He presided over executions with the detached interest of a man watching rain fall. He signed death warrants while servants poured wine the color of arterial blood. He walked through slave markets where human beings were sorted like cattle, his gaze passing over them as if they were furniture. But in the spaces between heartbeats, something flickered behind those crimson eyes, something that remembered. For Valyron was not merely a sorcerer-king. He was the eternal champion, and the eternal champion remembers everything. Night falls over Python like a shroud. In Valyron's sanctum, a chamber whose geometry defied natural law, darkness gathered. The room stood in the tower's highest reach, where reality grew thin and malleable. Its walls were carved with symbols that predated human language, inherited from the serpent people who had ruled when mankind's ancestors cowered in caves. 5 walls instead of 4. Corners meeting at angles no mortal geometry could name. A ceiling that stretched away into an impossible distance, though from the outside the tower rose no higher than any other. Valyron the Pale stood before a mirror of black volcanic glass, tall as 3 men. His reflection stared back, but not alone. Other faces flickered in the glass. Elric of Melnibone with his bone-white skin and soul-drinking sword. A woman with crimson eyes and knowing smile. Things that wore shapes language could not capture. Valyron the Pale remembered them all, every incarnation, every life, every death. The eternal champion was cursed with perfect memory across infinite lifetimes. He had been tyrant and liberator, hero and villain, man and monster. He had ruled empires and torn them down. He had saved worlds and damned them. Always the same pattern, always the same dance. The mirror rippled like water struck by wind. The reflections scattered. Something else pressed against the glass from the other side. Shadows coalesced, not the absence of light, but presences of pure darkness, entities that had never known form as mortals understood it. The lords of chaos manifested, shapes that hurt to perceive directly, suggestions of vast wings, countless eyes, geometries that shifted and reformed. The air itself screamed silently at their presence. Valyron. The voice of Arioch came layered and resonant, speaking in harmonics that shouldn't exist. Our faithful instrument. Python's glory dims like a guttering candle. The slaves sharpen bronze in secret. The barbarian tribes gather like storm clouds on your borders. Valyron did not bow, did not kneel, did not avert his gaze. He faced the lords of chaos as an equal, or as close to equal as mortal flesh could claim. "I know," he said. "Then you know Python stands at the edge of the abyss," came Ziombag's voice, feminine, cruel, sweet as poisoned honey. Acheron's time grows short. The young races rise with iron in their souls and fury in their hearts. I know that too. "We offer you power, Pale King," Arioch continued. "Power to crush the upstart tribes, power to make Acheron eternal, power to stand against the turning of the cosmic wheel itself. All we require is a small service, an opening of certain gates, a breaking of certain seals, things that should walk again, hungers that should feed." Long silence. Valyron's crimson eyes reflected the writhing darkness. "What is your price?" Laughter like breaking glass, like screaming winds, like the death rattle of stars. Only what you've already given us, champion. Your soul, your will, your certainty that you can take what chaos offers without paying what chaos demands. Dawn breaks over Python, but something has changed in the light. It falls at wrong angles. Shadows move independently of their casters. Valyron walked Python's streets as the sun clawed its way above the eastern waste. Around him, the city writhed with barely contained power. Slaves toiled in demon pits. Sorcerers conducted rituals that made reality weep. Children were sorted for sacrifice with the casual efficiency of farmers culling livestock. And Valyron remembered. He remembered Melnibone in its glory, drugging itself on lotus and cruelty. He remembered the young kingdoms rising in righteous fury. He remembered standing on Imria's burning walls, watching an age die because it deserved to die. He remembered the bright empire, ruling with crystalline tyranny until barbarian fury smashed it to glittering shards. He remembered Quetzalcoatl in the sighing desert, where sorcerer-kings bred humans like cattle until the cattle learned to wield knives. Always the same tale, told in different tongues across infinite worlds. The sorcerer-kings grown fat on their own cruelty, the slaves risen up with righteous fury, the cosmic balance correcting itself with blood and bronze. In the street, a slave girl, maybe 12 summers, carried a burden twice her weight. She fell. An overseer raised his whip. The Valyron caught the man's wrist. "Get out of my sight," he said quietly. The overseer fled. The girl stared up at the Pale King with eyes like broken windows. Valyron released her and walked on, but something in his expression had shifted. In that moment, Valyron the Pale understood what the Lords of Chaos had offered him. Not power, not salvation. The honey that burns like phosphorus, the gift that devours the giver. They offered him the chance to fight against the turning of the cosmic wheel, to stand against history itself and make Acheron eternal. They offered him the one thing the eternal champion could never accept, the chance to be the exception. Night. Valyron's sanctum. He stood before the black mirror once more. The Lords of Chaos pressed against reality, eager for his answer. "Well, champion." Ariok's voice dripped with anticipation. "Will you accept our gift? Will you make Python eternal? Will you crush the uprising before it begins?" Valyron stood silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, final. "No." The shadows recoiled as if struck. "You would refuse us?" Ziombag's voice rose in fury. "You who have drunk deep of Chaos's cup, you who have ruled in our name across a dozen incarnations." "I would refuse you. I have been the tyrant, Lady of Chaos. I have worn the oppressor's crown, and I have learned that some things deserve to fall." He turned from the mirror, facing the assembled darkness with crimson eyes that held no fear. Python deserves to fall. Acheron deserves to fall. We have made slaves of the young races. We have fed their children to our demons. We have twisted their women into shapes that pleased our jaded appetites. The barbarians are justified in their hatred. The shadows writhed with fury. "You speak treason against your own kind," Ariok thundered. "I speak truth. And I know this truth because I have lived it across infinite worlds. The wheel turns, Lord Ariok. It always turns. Law rises when chaos grows too strong. Chaos rises when law grows too rigid. This is the dance. This is the balance." He drew his blade, not Stormbringer, not in this incarnation, but its cousin, a sword that moaned like winter wind, that drank souls like wine. "I am the eternal champion. I stand at the fulcrum of the cosmic scales, and I tell you now, Python's weight has tipped too far. The balance demands correction." "Then you condemn your city to flame." "Ah!" Ziombag shrieked. "Your people to slaughter." "I condemn nothing that has not already condemned itself." The shadows surged forward, rage incarnate. For a moment it seemed they would tear him apart. Then Arioch's voice cut through the chaos, cold and calculating. "Very well, champion. Refuse our gift. But know this, when Python falls, when the barbarians put your head on a spike, when Acheron drowns in its own blood, you could have prevented it. This doom is yours to own. No, Lord of Chaos, this doom is ours, mine, yours, Python's, Acheron's. We earned it. And the barbarians who will destroy us, they will earn their own doom in time. The wheel turns, the dance continues, and the champion plays his part." The shadows retreated, hissing like serpents driven back by fire. "Then play it well, faithless servant," Arioch spat, "for we shall remember this refusal when next you beg for Chaos's aid." They vanished. The mirror cracked, a single line from top to bottom. The Lyron stood alone in the sudden silence. Thus did Valyron the Pale refuse the Lords of Chaos. Thus did he seal Python's fate and his own. But the eternal champion had made his choice with open eyes. He knew what was coming. He had seen it before, would see it again in ages yet unborn. The only question now was how to ensure the fall served its purpose. Days passed, weeks. To outside eyes nothing changed. Valyron the Pale still ruled with iron certainty, still presided over dark rituals, still signed death warrants with an unwavering hand. But in secret he began to prepare. In the demon pits, ostensibly conducting rituals, his words were slightly wrong, weakening the bindings, not strengthening them. When the barbarians came, the demons would turn on their Acheronian masters. In council with other sorcerer-kings, he advised them to pull garrisons from the outer walls. "The barbarians are too scattered to threaten us," he lied with perfect composure. The other sorcerers believed him, because Valyron had never led them astray before. Walking past groups of slave children being trained as sacrifices, he would pause, speak a word of power, subtle, barely audible. The chains binding them corroded slightly. Not enough to notice immediately, but when the attack came, they would break easily. At night, standing atop Python's walls, watching the campfires of the gathering Hyborian tribes, he would receive a slave bringing wine. "Tell me," he asked an older woman, "do you have children?" The slave stared at him in shock. Sorcerer-kings did not speak to slaves. I did, my lord. 3 sons, taken for the pits when they reached fighting age. And if you could have one wish, what would it be?" The woman's eyes filled with tears and rage. "To see this city burn, to see every sorcerer-king screaming as we scream, to see Python ground to dust and its towers cast down." The Lyron nodded slowly. "You will have your wish." Valyron the Pale was not seeking redemption. The eternal champion knew better than to believe in redemption. He had damned himself across too many lifetimes for that. But he could ensure that Python's fall served its purpose, that the barbarians would win cleanly, decisively, that the knowledge of Acheron, the demon binding, the soul drinking, the reality warping sorceries that had made Python mighty, would burn with the city. that the young races would inherit a world cleaner than the one they fought to claim. In his library, he burned scrolls one by one. Each contained spells that could shatter mountains, rituals that could bind gods, theorems that could unmake reality. He fed them to the flames without hesitation. In the temple vaults, he shattered crystallized souls, the power source of Acheron's greatest magics. Each crystal held 1,000 tormented spirits. He destroyed them methodically, freeing agonies that should have fueled Python's sorceries for centuries to come. He prepared Python's pyre with the same cold efficiency he'd once used to rule it. But there remained one final task, the hardest task. The task that would cost him not just his life, but the last shreds of whatever humanity still clung to his ancient soul. For Valyron was not alone in the bloodline of Python's ruling house. He had kin, 2 cousins who shared his crimson eyes, his white hair, his sorcerous might. 2 who had drunk as deeply from chaos's cup as he had, perhaps deeper. Zaltara, called the Beautiful, his cousin whom he had loved since they were children running through Python's purple halls, before cruelty became their daily bread. She who had stood beside him through a dozen campaigns, whose laughter had once made even his cold heart warm. But she had given herself wholly to the lords of chaos. She whispered to Arioch in her dreams. She wore Ziombag's gifts like jewels, and she would never let Python fall without a fight. And Malthor, called the Usurper, his other cousin who had coveted the throne since the day Valyron claimed it, ambitious, cunning, ruthless even by Acheronian standards. He too served the lords of chaos, seeing in their patronage his path to supreme power. With Valyron dead and Python fallen, Melthor would gather the survivors, rebuild, resurrect the old ways. The cycle would continue. The cancer would regrow. Valyron stood in his chambers, his soul-drinking blade laid across his knees, and contemplated murder. Not in battle, not in the heat of righteous fury or defensive necessity, but cold, calculated murder of the only 2 people in all of Python who bore his blood. If he did nothing, they would survive Python's fall. They would gather the scattered Acheronian remnants. They would teach the old sorceries to new generations. They would ensure that Acheron's poison lived on, even if its cities burned. The barbarians would win the battle, but lose the war, corruption seeping back into the world like rot into clean flesh. The wheel would not turn. The balance would not correct. History's demand would be cheated. Crom, he whispered to gods who did not listen. What manner of monster have I become, that I weigh the deaths of loved ones with the same cold calculation I once used to count slaves? But he knew the answer. He had always known. The eternal champion was not permitted the luxury of personal attachment when cosmic necessity demanded otherwise. Love was a weakness. Mercy was a weakness. In the grand calculus of the balance, 2 lives, even 2 lives he cherished, meant nothing against the future of the world. He rose, blade in hand, and went to do what history demanded. He found Zaltara in her chambers, surrounded by mirrors of black glass, communing with her chaos lords. She was beautiful still, despite the changes their patron gods had wrought. Her white hair cascaded like frozen waterfalls. Her crimson eyes held depths that mortal sight could not fathom. When she turned and saw him standing in her doorway, blade drawn, understanding dawned immediately. "Valyron," she said. No fear, no surprise, just a terrible sadness. "So you have chosen the barbarians over your own blood." "I have chosen the balance over chaos," he replied. "I have chosen the future over the past. I have chosen what must be over what I wish could be." "We could fight them together," she pleaded, not for her life, but for the dream they'd once shared. "We could make Python eternal. We could become the very thing the balance was created to prevent." He stepped into the chamber. "I have walked this road before, Zaltara, in other lives, in other worlds. I know where it leads. It leads to stagnation, to corruption so deep that reality itself begins to rot." "Then let it rot," she cried, and for the first time he heard desperation in her voice. "Why should we care? We are strong enough to survive any rot, any ruin. The Lords of Chaos promised us honey that burns like phosphorus. They promised us everything and demanded only our souls, our wills, our certainty that we could take without paying." His blade trembled in his hand. "I will not pay that price. Not anymore." "Then you will kill me. Me, who stood beside you when all others fled. Me, who loved you when you were unlovable." "Yes." The word fell like a headsman's axe. "Because I loved you. Because I love you still. Because you deserve better than to become the thing the Lords of Chaos would make of you." He moved before she could summon her defenses, before the Lords of Chaos could intervene. His blade, that soul-drinking thing forged in hell foundries beyond reason, took her cleanly. Her last breath was his name, spoken not in hatred, but in understanding. As her body fell, as her soul was drawn screaming into the blade, Valyron the Pale felt something break inside him that would never heal, not in this life or any life to come. He had killed the woman he loved to ensure Python would truly die. The eternal champion's burden carried across infinite incarnations to do what was necessary, regardless of the cost to his own humanity. He found Molthor in the council chambers, already gathering loyal sorcerers, already planning for Python's defense, or perhaps its succession, should Valyron fall to barbarian steel. Molthor's crimson eyes narrowed as Valyron entered, still carrying a blade wet with Zaltara's blood. "Cousin," Molthor said, "I heard screaming from the upper chambers." "Zaltara is dead," Valyron stated, "by my hand." The assembled sorcerers froze. Malthor's face went through a dozen expressions in the space of a heartbeat: shock, calculation, fear, and finally, cold rage. "You dare." His voice was silk over iron. "You dare strike down your own blood? Have you gone mad, Valyron?" "Perhaps." Valyron advanced into the chamber. The other sorcerers scattered like crows before a hunting cat. "Or perhaps I've finally achieved the clarity that comes from seeing the same pattern repeat across 1,000 lifetimes. You speak in the riddles of a broken mind. I speak the truth you refuse to see. Python is doomed, Malthor. Acheron is doomed. The barbarians will tear down our purple towers and salt the earth where we stood. This is inevitable. This is necessary. This is the cosmic balance correcting itself." Malthor laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "And you would simply accept this? Valyron the Pale, mightiest of Python's sorcerer-kings, would bow his head to unwashed barbarians. I would ensure that when Python falls, it stays fallen." Valyron's blade rose. "I know you, cousin. You would survive this fall. You would gather the remnants. You would teach the old ways to new generations. You would ensure that Acheron's corruption lives on, a poison in the world's veins." "And what is wrong with that?" Malthor's voice rose, power gathering around him like a storm. "We are the pinnacle of civilization. We have mastered the very fabric of reality. You would throw all of that away for what? The savage righteousness of bronze-wielding primitives?" "I would throw it away because it has become poison. Because we have become poison. Because sometimes the only way to cure a sickness is to burn it out entirely." Malthor's hands wove patterns in the air, summoning forces that would have torn a normal man's sanity to shreds. "Then you have truly gone mad, and I will do what you should have done long ago. I will take your throne and save Python from your faithless treachery." They clashed in the center of the council chamber, two albino sorcerers whose blood ran back to the oldest days of Acheron. This was not the clean combat of warriors. This was reality-warping sorcery, demon-summoning, soul-stealing, dimension-cracking power unleashed without restraint. The chamber screamed. The walls ran with colors that had no names. The air itself fractured into crystalline shards that cut at existence. But Valyron had made his choice. He had accepted what he was doing, accepted the necessity of it, accepted the cost. Malthor fought to preserve his ambitions, his dreams of power, his certainty that Acheron could be saved. And in the calculus of the cosmic balance, acceptance of necessity always defeats the desperate clutching at fading glory. Valyron's blade found its mark, not in Malthor's heart, but in his throat. A killing stroke, but slow. Slow enough for words. Malthor fell to his knees, blood the color of midnight spilling from the wound. His hands clawed at his ruined throat, his eyes wide with betrayal and understanding. You could have saved us. No. Valyron knelt beside his dying cousin. I could have delayed the inevitable. I could have made Python's fall slower, bloodier, more terrible. I could have ensured that our corruption spread even as we died. But I could not save us. We passed beyond saving when we fed the first child to our demons and called it necessity. Malthor's crimson eyes dimmed. His last breath was a curse in languages dead before mankind climbed down from the trees. Valyron the Pale stood alone in a council chamber that now resembled a slaughterhouse. Around him lay the bodies of sorcerers who had tried to intervene, who had chosen the wrong side in a conflict they couldn't understand. He had killed them all, efficiently, without mercy, without hesitation. He had killed everyone who could perpetuate Acheron's sorceress legacy. He had murdered the two people in all the world who shared his blood. He had made himself the last of his kind, so that when he fell, the knowledge would die with him. This was the eternal champion's burden, to do what history demanded, regardless of the cost to his own soul. The barbarians came at dawn 3 days later. They crashed against Python's gates like a tide of bronze and righteous fury. They came with axes and crude swords, with rage that had festered for generations, with nothing to lose and everything to gain. And Python's defenses, weakened by Valyron's careful sabotage, crumbled like sand before the flood. Valyron the Pale stood atop his highest tower, watching the city burn. He made no move to defend it. He had done all that needed doing. The sorcerers who might have rallied a defense lay dead by his hand. The demon bindings he had weakened failed spectacularly, turning summoned horrors against their would-be masters. The slave chains he had corroded snapped, and the servants became insurgents, attacking from within. Python died in flames and blood and screaming bronze, and Valyron watched it all with crimson eyes that held no regret, no satisfaction, only the terrible acceptance of cosmic necessity. When the young Hyborian warrior finally climbed the tower steps, axe in hand and fury in his eyes, Valyron descended to meet him. Not to win, he knew he would not win, but the part must be played. The champion must fall so the world might rise. And in that final descent, he carried the one truth he could never conquer, that love, quiet as a heartbeat and fierce as will itself, had shaped his doom more deeply than any god or blade.
O Pale King, eterni bellatos, O Pale King, champion, united in ruin. He returns, rota virtutum, and we are dust beneath it, et polvis sumus subia.